The topic of this video is, in a real sense, very weird. Not that it's about a weird thing, but that it's weird to make a video on it. Most people will listen to this and just think, well yeah, thanks Captain Obvious. And so, I think a little introduction as to why this video exists would be appropriate. It's quite natural to assume that the topic of this video is accepted as absolute fact by practically everyone. But actually, I've found that this is not the case. Not everyone thinks that this is certain. But just because some people think something certain is uncertain is not really a good enough reason for me to make a video about it. As I contemplated this topic, something more important became apparent, and that is that the question of the existence of experience mirrors the basic problem which forms the foundation of practically all spiritual traditions, and that problem concerns the question, on what ground can one finally rest in assurance, or rather, where actually is peace? And so, I'm sharing this video because if you can see through the obviousness and pointlessness of what I'm going to portray, I think you will find that there is something else going on beneath these words, which can help us to return to that which is most easily forgotten, precisely in its obviousness. We spend our lives chasing explanations and understandings to verify reality, but everything we seek intellectual certainty about is already unfolding within the one thing we cannot be immediately uncertain of, which is the presence of our own experience. The following may seem pointless, but really it is the very same recognition that dismantles the idea that the goal of spirituality is something to be grasped or attained, and thus allows the mind to rest in the simple directness of being. What we are looking for is the very capacity by which we look. There is no confirmation of this thing because it's already known. Denial or devaluation of the fact that it's already known is the foundation of the feeling of being cut off from reality and our unsureness of whether anything is truly reliable or secure. And so, with that said, as you listen to this video, you should entertain that feeling of doubt that we all have, and I hope that, if you do this, this doubt can become transparent, and you will see that you already have all the certainty you could ever need for a peaceful life. It is an obvious intuition that while I am awake and conscious, there is experience. Though the content and object of any particular experience may be subject to doubt or misapprehension, the sheer fact that there is an experience occurring is immune to doubt, for the very act of doubting or questioning is itself an experience. However, a skeptic might argue that while it seems to us that we have experience, this seeming is itself unverifiable. That is, the inference from I am experiencing to the real existence of experience is not justified. It is conceivable that our sense of experience is illusory or subject to error. We think we experience, but we might be mistaken. This objection is self-defeating. The assertion, we think we experience, must itself be regarded as an experience. The act of entertaining the possibility of error cannot occur in the absence of experience. If it were true that there were no experience at all, there would be no doubt, no thinking, no inquiry as to the reality of experience at all. To think that one is experiencing means to experience thinking. So again, the content of the experience, what is experienced and what is believed about experience, may indeed be unreal, but the fact that there is experience occurring is beyond doubt. But the skeptic may concede the presence of subjective experience without accepting its objective truth, but this is, again, self-defeating. To admit the presence of subjectivity is precisely to acknowledge experience. The presence of subjectivity is, in fact, a much more radical claim than the presence of experience, for it presupposes a subject, a subject who cannot posit themselves to exist in the absence of experience. So long as there is any subjective apprehension at all, there must be experience. But the skeptic may still wish to reserve a margin of error, as though there is a non-zero chance that the assertion, "I am experiencing something, therefore there is experience," is mistaken. But what would it mean, exactly, for this proposition to be false? The refusal to grant 100% certainty that there is experience is a confusion grounded in an unwillingness to accept the irreducible presence of one's own subjectivity. The very acknowledgement of uncertainty, of not being sure, presupposes the experience of uncertainty, and thus the proposal is self-justifying. That which is questioned cannot itself be absent while the question is sincerely posed. The skeptic might continue that they are concerned that this blind acceptance of experience is, in the end, a kind of dogma, and that what they are really arguing for is intellectual humility. One might be inclined to suspect that, in asserting the certainty of experience, we have privileged one dogmatic belief over another, perhaps clinging to it simply because we desire certainty in a world where every other commitment is subject to doubt. But this objection fails to recognize the unique status of experience. Doctrines, dogmas, and beliefs are indeed objects the mind may grasp to or reject, but experience itself is not such an object of belief. Belief is just one possible kind of experience, because experience is the medium in which belief can occur. One may discard even the belief in one's body and the external world, but what remains in doing so is not a total void, but always the immediacy of something, an awareness, a present emptiness. And if we were to apprehend a blank void, then this would also be a form of awareness. Experience cannot step outside itself to a vantage point where there is literally nothing, for that act would again be another experience. The claim that the self-validation of experience is a kind of dogma is itself something that appears in experience. It's not as though experience is justified by an external principle that could be doubted. Rather, experience is the ground upon which the meaningfulness of doubt and belief depends. Experience is not a doctrine to be believed, but the fact that makes any doctrine, including the doctrine that nothing can be known, possible to assert or deny in the first place. Belief and doubt are particular contents of experience, arising within a larger field of awareness whose reality they cannot escape. If we were a brain in a vat, or in a simulation, or a mere figment of someone's imagination, this fact would remain certain. All scenarios still require that there is experience occurring, however mysterious its nature. Even the notion that experience is wholly illusory is compatible with the point, for the illusion must be experienced as such in order to be referred to at all. So, while all manner of skepticism is possible regarding the nature, scope, or reliability of experience, skepticism about the fact of experience itself is unintelligible. To persist in doubting experience may be done with an intention for humility, but only insofar as one has allowed their desire for humility to override the most foundational element of our being. Every standard of evidence or proof is itself only accessible within experience, and nothing can be appealed to outside of it. To place demands for evidence outside experience is conceptually incoherent. It is to allow an intellectual or ethical desire to wield power over the lived fact of experience, which it cannot possibly transcend. In the genuine absence of experience, there are not just no values or truths, there is no nihilism, no perspective, not even the illusion of a someone who could adopt any perspective whatsoever. The denial is vacuous. Only what is present to be denied or doubted can meaningfully be debated. At a foundational level, then, it is not faith, but immediacy that grounds our certainty in experience. Those who would doubt the existence of experience are conflating two fundamentally different issues: the ontological analysis of existence in the classical metaphysical sense versus the immediate preconceptual fact of apparentness or manifest experience. The skeptic is rightly unable to provide an ontological guarantee that existence, as opposed to non-existence, is indeed the case, and they are thus hesitant to make any suppositions beyond what their rational methods can support. But this retreat into ontology is itself a retreat into dogma, the dogma of requiring determinable standards for what truly exists. Denying even the apparent existence of experience is a dogma, just as reifying experience into an ultimate substance is a dogma. The very act of analysing being versus non-being is to enter into a complicated system of metaphysical thought rather than recognising the simple fact at issue, that something, in the most minimal sense, is apparent at all. This distinction is essential. The certainty of experience refers not to any philosophical claim about what exists in itself or in some ultimate metaphysical sense, but simply to the incontrovertible fact that something is apparent, prior to any judgments about its ontological status. The question at hand is not, is there an ultimate substance that underlies appearances? It is, rather, is there anything that appears in any mode at all? The demand for an ontological demonstration of experience falls on its own sword. It is victim to the very thing it attempts to use as an attack, conceptual imposition onto experience. It is this insistent pursuit of proofs and definitions of being that introduces dogma, not the simple acknowledgement of apparentness. Appearances cannot be dogmatic. It matters not if you doubt them. They are simply there, giving you the material for any subsequent philosophical inquiry. It is only when we start separating appearances into things that exist or do not exist that the question of the nature of experience becomes dogmatic. It is thus a step too far for a skeptic to refuse to acknowledge anything at all. To do so does not, and cannot, address the level of immediacy at which the question of experience arises. To say there appears to be something is not to claim any particular truth about what is appearing. The statement is simply a precondition for any discourse, judgment, or the suspension of judgment itself. This is why, despite the rich history of philosophical skepticism, no serious philosopher has ever truly denied the existence of apparentness itself. Pyrrhonian and academic skeptics in antiquity asserted that truth in the strong sense is always beyond reach, and that one ought to withhold assent regarding what things are in themselves. Yet, even as they doubted, they never claimed that nothing at all appeared to them. Their epoché, the suspension of judgment, concerned only the reality behind what appears, not the fact of appearance itself. Furthermore, the Buddhist denial of the inherent self, Hume's skepticism about a persisting identity, and even the radical illusionists of contemporary cognitive science have all, in one form or another, challenged the ultimate metaphysical foundation of the self or the world. Yet none go so far as to deny that something is present to be discussed. Even if everything is an illusion, the illusion is still apparent. And if we can be deluded, then there is the experience of delusion. And I should also emphasize that it would also be a great mistake to hear my argument and then to decide that you do now believe there is experience. If you think you have been convinced by my words, then you are still using the intellect to decide something that was never doubted to begin with, because every single subjective experience you have is already imbued with the certain knowledge that it is occurring. When you are hungry, you do not need to question whether you are experiencing hunger. The experience itself is knowledge of its own occurrence. The demand for a reason to believe in experience, or for an explanation that would satisfy one's reason, is already knowledge of experience. To be dissatisfied, or to desire further justification, or to evaluate an argument, are all, at their core, the knowing of an experience with a particular character. Thus, the search for a justification of experience is self-defeating. To require satisfaction before accepting the claim that there is experience is to misconstrue the order of explanation. Unless there were already experience, dissatisfaction could not arise, nor could the criteria for a satisfactory explanation be meaningfully entertained. The entire account collapses, because there would be nothing there for which a person could find or fail to find satisfaction. An experience of disagreement and denial is, then, no less evidential than an experience of agreement. If there were no experience, there could be no fact of either agreement or disagreement. And this also means that to say, well, I'm pretty sure there is experience, but I cannot be certain, is also to completely reject lived experience in favour of a concept of experience. This is a fundamentally binary situation. Either there is some capacity to recognise, to doubt, to wonder, however feeble or confused, or else there is no capacity at all. There's no middle ground. If there is even the faintest glimmer of awareness, then absolute nothingness is impossible. Let's consider that there really is just nothing underlying an illusory experience. For there to be absolutely nothing at all levels of analysis, there would have to only be, or only not be, that nothingness. Even the illusory delusion that there is something more than nothing is more than absolute nothing. This more than absolute nothing is precisely the thing we must know if we have any ability to reflect on the question at all. If our experience is an illusion, then that illusion is the apparentness we are talking about. One can say that nothing is ultimately experienced, but this does not in any way undermine the original point. Whether ultimately real or ultimately unreal, the appearing of things is still apparent, and thus it is independent of any subsequent metaphysical interpretation about the true nature or value of what appears. To try to tackle this problem intellectually is to fall into a conceptual trap, and it is your very purpose in life to escape from this trap. Do not favour one side. Decline to make experience an object of philosophical judgment. Experience is not a perspective among others, it is the precondition for all perspectives. Therein lies the foundation not only of clarity, but of all spiritual traditions that counsel a return to direct actuality. To accept the immediacy of experience, holding neither to its ultimate reality nor its unreality, but simply abiding with what appears, frees the mind from the tyranny of conceptual judgment. It is the recognition that, whether in truth or in delusion, more than absolutely nothing appears. Doubt, skepticism, and intellectual humility are obviously important to philosophy, but the one thing that cannot be meaningfully doubted is that there is something to be doubted. To recognise this is to actually reconnect with experience. It is to recognise that which is beyond the conceptual maze that would judge or denigrate what is most direct and most undeniable. It is this foundation, rather than any philosophical system or belief, that endows inquiry with significance and restores us to the living core of knowledge. Thus, the reason I've gone on such a lengthy rant about what to most people is plainly obvious is that it is of the utmost importance. If you doubt experience, you may not feel troubled by your doubt, but you are creating trouble for yourself. Certainty regarding experience is not a luxury, but a necessity for any coherent intellectual life, and a satisfying emotional one. If one were to accept, I probably exist, or I probably have experience. The result would be a corrosive uncertainty that undermines all further claims. To lack certainty here is to permit a contradiction at the foundation of all inquiry. The denial of the certainty of experience is not something to be proud of. It is total and utter confusion, for it is parasitic on the fact that it claims to dispute. It is a conceptual disease whereby the mind and experience are at war with each other. Genuine coherence between thinking and experiencing can only be restored by acknowledging that the very act of denial or doubt is itself living evidence of that which it seeks to question. This is the one thing you cannot not know, yet which you can think you don't know, and thus it is the only secure ground you have in this world, and it is the very ground by which you can achieve liberation from suffering. All spiritual traditions eventually point back to immediacy. Be here now. Rest in that which is always present. Recognize your true nature as awareness itself. They teach that spiritual fulfillment does not reside in beliefs, rituals, or doctrines, but in a direct, non-conceptual recognition of what is happening right now. As soon as the mind chases after answers to who am I, what is the self, or what is the world, it becomes caught in endless loops of conceptual confusion. The realization that everything, including confusion, is an experience, returns you to simplicity. You do not need to solve the world or find an ultimate truth. You just have to look at and embrace what is present. That is the answer, to connect with the immediacy that is always available to you. Suffering arises from being divided within yourself, seeking security out in some conceptual future or metaphysical theory. When you recognize that experience is always already present, exactly as it is, you will be relieved. There is nothing to get, nothing to grasp, nothing to defend, because you cannot lose what is fundamental. This knowing, if we can call it that, surpasses understanding. It reveals that the deepest source of anxiety, the sense that we may be fundamentally cut off from truth and meaning, never needed solving in the first place. The answer is literally what is present as the very foundation of every question and every search for an answer.